Hello, everyone. We're going to get started. We have a busy night tonight, so we're going to get started. I'm pretty sure we are now being broadcast live. Hello and welcome. My name's Ann D'Souza Ward. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Melrose, and we're proud to present tonight's candidate forum for the contested local elections this year. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. Our mission is to educate the public about candidates and issues and increase civic engagement and voter participation. We don't endorse or oppose any candidates or political parties, although we do take positions and advocate about some issues. We're organized at the national, state, and local level. All people are invited to join. If this event is helpful to you or you feel inspired by our mission, we invite you to join us or donate. You can visit our website by searching on League of Women Voters of Melrose. This forum is being broadcast live. It's being also taped for streaming on MMTV's website. On Election Day, November 7th this year, the voters of Melrose will decide contested races for 3 school committee seats, 4 counselor at large seats, a ward councilor in Ward 2 and Ward 6, and for mayor. Tonight's forum will have 4 panels for the candidates on these races. Unfortunately, I have to note that the candidates for Ward 6 are unable to join us tonight due to unforeseen circumstances.
I'm here, Councilors.
Right. But we need to have both candidates. The forum can only be for contested races, and that's why wards 1, 3, and 5, they're not contested, and so they will not be participating tonight. The league is unable to present one side of or one candidate in a race because of our strict nonpartisan policy. So the only candidates for contested ward tonight will be the Ward 2 candidates. Excuse me. Our moderator is Lynn Brodsky. She's a member of the League of Women Voters of Winchester, and we are most appreciative of her willingness to serve as our neutral moderator. The League wishes to thank the City Council for allowing us to use the chamber tonight, MMTV for its assistance in broadcasting, the League members that have volunteered their time to work on this, and the candidates that have all agreed to participate and appear. All those thanks you said, I do want to note we are asking candidates not to spend their time thanking people tonight. And we know they're grateful for the opportunity, and we appreciate it, but we're giving them very short time limits for answering questions, and we want them to be able to use every minute they have to answer them. We also ask members from the audience to remain quiet during the forum and to refrain from clapping or cheering so we can focus on hearing what the candidates have to say. And finally, please remember to silence or turn off your cell phone while you're here in the room. And now please give your attention to our moderator, Lynn Brodsky.
Okay, thank you, Ann. So the first panel tonight is for the candidates for school committee. There are 3 seats up for election, and we have the 4 candidates here with us tonight. They are Matt Hartman, David Trepaz, Seamus Kelly, and Margaret Driscoll.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Can you hear me now?
I think you're in the microphone now.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, so the seating was determined at random by a card draw. The questions tonight were solicited from the public and reviewed and edited by a committee of the League of Women Voters of Melrose. I will ask the questions, and each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. Each new question will be started by the next candidate in line. A candidate may ask to have a question repeated if necessary. There are league members acting as timers in the audience, and the time will begin to run when a candidate begins a response. A yellow card will be held up when 20 seconds are left, and a red card will be held up when the time has expired. Candidates, please stop when you see the red card. Because of the short time available for answers, please be mindful of brevity and clarity. We also ask candidates to refrain from personal references about other candidates. So, the first question will go to you, Mr. Hartman. How would you improve transparency and communicate with the public about district needs, successes, and challenges?
So a great question. I think this is a serious need for the school district. As I think, as I've been knocking on doors, I do hear a lot of voters talking about not understanding what's necessarily happening, not understanding all the pieces of our budget. Many people don't know that we have a $3 million budget gap this year to fill in January. So it is a serious need. I do think that there are solutions. I think bringing up these issues in our committee meetings is critically important. Questioning them so that we are spelling out the elements of our needs in the meetings is important. And questioning our superintendent to make sure that they're bringing forth all the information that they need to in those meetings. In addition, I think the district should also be publishing more information directly to school participants and the public as much as possible. And, you know, if we need to consider communication support on that, I think that's actually a critical need because our district needs to be informed, our community needs to be informed about the levels of need that we have in the district, and we really need to be cognizant about that as a community.
Thank you, and please don't forget to silence your cell phones. Mr. Trapaz, same question?
Yep. Yeah, and I think that in terms of the ability to build shared understanding, I think is one of the critical things that we as a school committee need to do because of the size of the budget challenge we're up against, as well as our longer-term needs. And so I think that definitely the committee meetings are one forum where we'll get that message out, but I also think we need to consider other forums, whether that be coffee talks, whether that be building on what the superintendent is planning to do in terms of workshops, reaching out through things like the weekly news, Facebook. I think we need to just consistently and regularly make those communications so it's not kind of a one-off and people feel surprised by it at the end.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Kelly, same question?
Sure, thank you. So I think improving transparency is very important. One of the things that we could do, and we should start doing this winter, is having forums around the budget at the different PTOs around the city to try to engage parents, bring them into the discussion, and have equality back and forth between some members of the school committee and parents. We do have to be careful around a quorum, but I think that is something that we can do. We should also have these forums to start preparing for our next teacher's contract. I think we all had a real challenge last year with how that went and not really understanding what's going on. So I think if we could have forums with our parents and other stakeholders to really prepare for what do we want for our next teacher's contract, I think that's another way to bring transparency into the process.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Ms. Driscoll.
Thank you. I think number one, working with the superintendent, so high quality leadership and working to alert the superintendent relative to things that we hear in the community helps the superintendent then communicate that out effectively, as we have seen this year. That building of relationships, so us as school committee members being able to listen and learn from people around the city very frequently at all the events that we attend also helps mutual understanding. Working with organizations like the citywide PTO, like the site councils and so forth are really good ways for people who are embedded in the work to do that. Again, the forums, I believe, are in the superintendent's goals this year, so that's already been discussed. And so there is a real intention on the part of the administration and the school committee to take advantage of those relationship-building opportunities and share information as we can.
Okay, thank you. And so the next question begins with you, Mr. Trapaz, and it is, we are in the process of hiring a new school superintendent. How would you foster a good working relationship with the new superintendent?
I think there's a couple of angles of this. I think one is just making sure that we have clear goals set up so that it's clear to them, well, what our expectations are, and we're also not asking too much of them. In terms then of just supporting them as they're going through, what are the things that they need, both from a staff standpoint, what do they need to be able to achieve the academic or similar goals that they have, and then working to make sure that those are embedded into our policy, into our budget, so that they can ultimately be successful and we're a partner in that success.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Sure, thank you. I think as we do look for a new superintendent, we definitely want to find somebody who has broad experience running schools, so I think supporting them in that is important. Somebody who's committed to the success of all of our students, and working with the superintendent to really set some goals about tackling some chronic issues that we continuously hear about. And I think that some of those could include looking at our special education system, looking at teacher support so that we have enough paraprofessionals and substitutes, and addressing some of the behavioral issues that we hear about at the middle school.
Thank you. Ms. Driscoll?
Thank you. One thing I think is really important is for school committee members to set up regular meetings with the superintendent or have some kind of regular call with the superintendent. It's information sharing. It's an opportunity to hear what's happening on the administrative side and express concerns that have been heard around the community. It builds trust, and it builds the opportunity to build the relationship so that when times get hard, which they always do, there's already that relationship set up. We need to follow committee policy around working, school committee members as elected officials, working with staff members. So if there's an issue that comes up, we have a policy that says we would not necessarily go directly to a staff member. We would go, or we would alert the superintendent that we wanted to talk to a staff member. So that keeps everybody in the loop. So that's another way to foster a good working relationship, is to share that information.
Thank you. Finally, Mr. Hartman?
Thank you. I think the basis of any good relationship is a relationship based upon trust. And so that is a two-way street, and that means that we've got to have a real direct communication channel with the superintendent, whether that's regular meetings or at the school committee meetings. It also means we have to stand up for the community as well and make sure that the superintendent is hearing what the community is hearing and is not blindsided at any point during their career in Melrose. It's a partnership. We have to constantly evaluate if we're doing the right thing with the superintendent. If the superintendent comes to us with issues, we also have to figure out how to manage those, because it's a back and forth between the school committee and the superintendent to achieve a shared success for all of our kids in Melrose.
Thank you. Okay, the third question. The budget that the city allocates to the school department is usually less than the amount that the schools actually need. Thus, the schools run at a constant deficit and need a supplemental budget allocation every year. What can the school committee do about this? And Mr. Kelly, you have the first.
Sure. So I think the first thing the school committee can do is point out to the public that the city of Melrose has a structural deficit that for some reason is being put on the school's back, and it can really harm us if we don't take care of it. I think another thing that we can do around the budget is to aggressively go after state and federal grants, and I think that could be something that we ask the superintendent to do and evaluate the superintendent under it. But I think at the end of the day, we really need to refocus our city's approach to how it budgets the schools and not have the schools be the constant bearer of our city structural deficit.
Ms. Driscoll?
Thank you. I agree that the schools should not bear the burden. However, it's clear that the way schools have run, right? We all went to school, so we feel we have an understanding how schools run, and the amount of change and evolution that has happened in schools is shocking and unbelievable and positive in so many ways. But we have laws and regulations that we have to follow, that we need to keep up with, that costs more money. And so to be able to do that with special education, we have an obligation and honor the respect that we have for the work that needs to be done there and lifting up our students. We have different kinds of other regulations we need to follow. So we have to make sure we understand and communicate to the community what it actually costs to run schools today, and then have conversations about what it will need all of us to do to get on the same page to honor that.
Thank you. Mr. Hartman?
So I really see public schools as a real central element in our community, in any community. And, we pay one property tax bill. We don't pay a tax bill for schools and a tax bill for the Department of Public Works. I think we all need to realize that as a shared responsibility and be prepared to make the investments we need to make, because it is one city budget. We need to look at it as one city budget. We need to make sure that we're balancing all of our choices about how we invest in each program. The schools is the largest department in the city, and it does, I think, unfairly receive the largest and only deficit in the city. That means we're underfunding our schools. It means there are needs not being met, and that is the critical mission of the school committee, of the superintendent, and everybody involved in the schools. Every teacher that came to the school committee meetings last winter was fighting to be a better educator for our students. And we are failing them, we are failing everybody if we are not fully funding our schools to make sure that we are meeting the needs of every family in Melrose.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Trapaz.
Yep. So I think this is one where we need to break the cycle that we have here in Melrose right now. And so just as a starting point, I see us presenting really three budgets. One is what the city funds and actually showing the community what that will mean for our students and for the community. Secondly is the level of services, of which we currently do. And then lastly is sort of the expectations budget, because a lot of times, as I've been talking to folks, they definitely have very high expectations, but I don't know if there is an understanding of what that would really cost. And I think by bringing that out, that helps to bridge that gap about where we actually are as a community. I think secondly becomes around the investments that we need to make, both in terms of the professional development, which can ultimately help to lower our longer term costs by bringing some of those things like special education in-house where it's possible, but also delivering a better academic outcome as well for our students. And I think ultimately that will, those things will help us here.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Ms. Driscoll, you get to go first. So given the city's support for diversity, equity, and inclusion, how do you see the school committee's role in this area? Are there ways the school committee should implement this policy in the schools?
Thank you. So a key area that we need more uplift in is hiring teachers of color. So it is well known that teachers of color make a big difference in a district, and we need not just racial diversity, but we need diversity in many ways. We have people who are differently abled. We have a variety of diversity needs, and we need to be able to have students in front of teachers who represent diversity, which is a constant challenge for all districts in our state. Diversity can also be reflected by using and supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator, who we have used in the past to help us all with professional development and training around this work. So that is another key area, because our PD plan, our professional development plan, is approved by the school committee.
Thank you. Mr. Hartman.
Thank you. So I think diversity is a very broad word to capture a lot of different types of diversity, everything from racial diversity to learning abilities to physical abilities. I think we need to be very broad with how we're looking at that. And it is a constant process. It's not something where we need to bring in one solution and move on. We need to constantly be evaluating, discussing, and looking back on what we've done to see if it's been successful. We hear a lot about disparities in discipline. We need to have a regular discussion about the discipline and see the numbers and see if we're implementing anything that can change those numbers to make them more even. We need to focus on access in our classrooms and in our buildings. When we're talking about students' abilities, we need to make sure that they're supported to achieve the best educational outcomes they can have. We also need to make sure our buildings are upgraded to the standard that allows all students to be able to achieve in those classrooms. We have buildings that are not ADA accessible. We need to fix that. These are needs of students to be successful in our district, and we should meet them.
Thank you. Mr. Trapaz.
Yep. So three things, just in the interest of time. I think one is building on what we have today. I think actually if I look at the curriculum just between my son and my daughter, I've already seen the benefits of that and the diversity of the materials that they use and the learning experience they have. And I think that's really important that we continue to build on that. I think secondly, to echo what was said earlier, really expanding our hiring of more diverse teachers and educators. I think that's one where if we look at the state level, we do see that the pool of candidates is increasing, and I think that's an opportunity where we can tap into that, starting with the university level and building on top of that. And I think lastly, we really need to support our students in terms of closing the academic achievement gap. I think ultimately, if you look to the left and you look to the right and somebody who looks different than you is performing at a much lower level, you're going to build that unconscious bias straight from the start. And that's something we really need to make sure that we fund and have the right policies to address that.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Kelly.
Sure, thank you. Three things come to mind. One is obviously the diversity of staff, and in order to do that, to recruit a diverse staff, we clearly need to start paying our teachers more. So I think that's something to think about as we plan for the next contract. I think another thing is to communicate with parents so they understand what's going on within the schools and that they understand the topics that are being addressed so that you can sort of dial down any concerns that some parents might have because they don't understand what terms and definitions mean. And then I think professional development that resonates with teachers needs to be looked at and constantly reevaluated.
Thank you. We're back to you. If money was not an issue, what one policy or project would you like to implement in the schools? Mr. Hartman.
A magic wand that makes me more money. So that's a really tough question. I think our top concerns are around, in my mind, supporting our educators and making sure that we have enough of them in the classrooms to teach our kids. That is our largest expense in the school district is human resources, and it is an enormous expense, and it's something that we need to constantly be investing in to make sure we have high-quality educators in every classroom and in every support situation for our students. And we need to make sure that we're constantly being competitive. That's where the regular investment is needed. Teachers and professionals of any kind really are going to be looking around at what other places are doing, and there's going to be a reputation associated with communities that don't invest. So I think we need to, if I had a magic wand, that might be the first place I would focus on investing.
Thank you. Mr. Trepaz.
Yep. For me, 100 out of 100 times it's going to be early education, because I think if by investing in the youngest children, you're going to get the best outcome later on in their academics, in terms of their, and in terms of life outcomes. Just starting off with basic numeracy and literacy and just playing nice in the sandbox. Ultimately, those things are skills. The more that we can reduce the disparity between kids, you're going to have a much better outcome later on where they're able now to learn at the same level as others around them. You're going to have less discipline issues. You're going to be able to address maybe underlying issues a lot sooner so that when the child gets older, we don't have to invest as much in terms of out-of-district and other types of expenses.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Sure, so if I had a magic wand, I would certainly invest money into the schools around staffing to help increase the pay for our teachers, also reduce class sizes, make sure that we have appropriate levels of paraprofessionals across all schools, and also ensure that we always have appropriate substitutes for teachers who are absent so that our kids are in the classroom and learning.
Thank you. Ms. Driscoll.
Thank you. One of the most surprising issues that we have that many other districts around the state don't have is increasing enrollments. So right now, our school buildings are just filled to the brim, which is a very happy problem. We are over 4,000 students now. So we need more space because we have kids getting educated in hallways, in music rooms, in places that were designed for other things. And we want to make sure that they are being educated in appropriate spaces, that those spaces are safe and healthy. That is critically important. The other thing, in addition to, of course, making sure that our educators are compensated fairly and honorably and well, is to ensure that they are well-trained. A well-trained teacher in front of a class can make a huge difference in the learning of students. There is evidence to support that. So by providing more opportunities for them to collaborate, more opportunities for them to be trained on the most current and evolving educational issues, helps them support children better.
Thank you. So, as a final question, we offer each of you 1 minute to use as you wish. You may expand on a previous answer, rebut a position, or tell us a question that you wish we had asked you and how you would answer. Mr. Trepaz.
It's a great question. Thank you. I think we have a lot of things going well for us in Melrose, and I think sometimes we only focus on the negative things. And one of the things I hope that as whichever three of us move forward here, is that we're able to bring that out into the community. And so, at least for me, one of the things that, maybe 5 of the things that I think we need to do a much better job of and things I think we can do in the next 4 years, number one, just bringing our goals and measurements just very clear out there, a scorecard. This is how we're doing so that we're not kind of just sort of touching something once and then having it fall behind again. Secondly, you've heard us said tonight about the budget, so really just making that very clear, concise, so it's understandable for folks. Thirdly, just multi-year planning, just where are we going to be in 5 years and where is our gaps? Our funding identified for each of those things we want to do. And then lastly, the communication, because ultimately that's going to tie it all together for a shared understanding.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Sure. I think we need to, as a school district, talk about our facilities. Margaret brought it up. There's been talk over the years about what we're going to do with the BB school. We clearly need to bring that online because our schools are stretched very thin with space. We've got kids who are in hallways getting reading supports, math supports, and stairwells at least one school. So that's something that we need to look at for facilities. Also at the elementary school level, we only have one custodian shift. I think we need to move to 2 so that the schools are in good shape when the kids arrive the next morning and teachers are ready to teach. And then also go before the school building authority to address the Winthrop School.
Thank you. Ms. Driscoll?
Thank you. I think one of the most important things in any kind of system or organization, and we are a very complex system, right? We have 450 staff members, we have 4,000 kids, we have 8 buildings. Normally that is a huge job in private industry. It's certainly a huge job as a superintendent of schools and as a school committee. One of the most effective things that I've seen is building an effective team. How do you work together to solve complex problems and do the best we can by our children in our schools? The joy of learning, which was mentioned here, the curiosity, what makes learning excited. When you go to the campus, see those kids and see how excited they are to learn. It's inspirational. And high-quality leadership. Teams cannot be built without high-quality leadership, people to tell our stories, to understand us, and to lead us to a good place and help solve those problems.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Hartman?
So I think that we need to build some community consensus around our biggest issues in front of us. I think we have some big issues coming, some big changes coming. We have a new superintendent coming in. We have many issues around school buildings. Our budget is obviously a huge issue. And we really need to have an open dialogue with all of our community members about how we solve these issues. It's been mentioned that we also have a contract up for our teachers and other professionals in the schools in just a couple of years. That's going to happen with any of the people that win the race here. I think that that's important to develop that conversation with our community to make sure that we have the community along with us. We have clearly communicated the needs of the schools to the community and make sure that we can share that progress together, because I think the community will step up and do it, as we've seen in the past. And I really believe that it's so important for our community as a whole, beyond the families that are just in the schools, to have a really effective, a really great educational experience for all of our families here.
Thank you. That concludes this panel. Thank you all for taking the time to participate, and thank you for your willingness to run for office and serve the community. So our next panel includes five of the 10 candidates for the 4 open at-large city council races. And it will be a similar format to the last debate, where the candidates were divided and seated at random by a card draw. The questions were solicited from the public and reviewed and edited by the League of Women Voters of Melrose. I will ask the questions, and each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. Each new question will be started with the next candidate in line, going down the line, and a candidate may ask to have a question repeated if necessary. There are league members acting as timers in the audience. The time will begin to run when a candidate begins a response. A yellow card will be held up when 20 seconds are left, and a red card will be held up when the time has expired. And the candidates with us tonight are Ryan Williams, Paul Schilly, Christopher Sullivan, John Orlandella, and Ed O'Connell. So the first question goes to you, Mr. Williams, and we'll go around the circle. What is your position on the debt exclusion for new public safety buildings that will be on the ballot this November? Specifically, what do you think about the proposed relocation of the police station to the Ripley school site?
Thank you. So I voted to put the question of the safety buildings on the ballot, as did the rest of the council. I think that we need to very seriously take a look at our capital planning needs across the city and come up with a plan that can stage these instead of going into the kind of boom and bust crisis mode where we find ourselves needing to suddenly correct decades of not paying attention to these things. So I definitely support the effort to get the public safety buildings updated. I do think the council will have an extremely important role in negotiating and containing those costs when each building individually comes before the council for approval for the final budget. On the topic of the police building moving to down into Ward 7, which is where I'm the current ward councilor, I'm not in love with the idea of having the police station down there. It doesn't have a whole lot to do with the operation of the police department, which I understand is fairly remote because they all travel in their vehicles. It has more to do with the centrality of the public service to the city downtown. And I also understand that there's limited land available.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. So the same question for Mr. Schilly?
I'm absolutely in favor of the public safety buildings, but I do have some concerns regarding 2.5 override monies in the school. And my concern is that, you know, there's been a lack of oversight with that, and I'm concerned about if that occurs again on a larger scale, the city will be in trouble. So it scares me, and it should scare all of us. I would propose, if we did do something like that, that we put together an oversight committee comprised of the mayor, the city council president, a couple of the city councilors, 3 citizens, that will meet every 2 weeks with the builder contractor to discuss progress and issues and report to the city council. I'd also like to see the minutes of the meeting published
Okay.
on the website.
All right.
I'd also like to propose,
Thank you, Mr. Shelley. You'll have another opportunity to address this later if you want. Mr. Sullivan, same question.
Sure. I was just here, was probably, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and was sitting in that table over there as one of the public speakers in support of the debt exclusion. We have to support our police and fire departments. I mean, they provide some of the most essential services for all of us. They protect us, they protect our kids, they protect our property. They deserve our respect, they deserve our support, and they deserve better working conditions that they have now. I think just about everybody who's here, at least physically, is pretty clued in politically and saw the Channel 7 News report about the deplorable conditions right next door at the downtown fire department. That has to end, and we have to find a way in which to create better living conditions for police and fire. I am concerned about the increase in taxes, but I think this is something that you really can't negotiate or quarrel or quibble with. We got to support our police and fire. We got to give them good working conditions. I'm 100% behind it. I'll work on it in the campaign, whether I get elected or I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question to you, Mr. Orlandella.
I think it's probably one of the most important things we're going to be dealing with as a incoming city council. This is a long since delayed necessity for both the fire department and the police department. And I think that, you know, supporting that is extremely important right now. We've pushed it. It's been kicked. It has to be addressed now. And any further delay in that is going to result in the continued decrease in staffing, which will result in poorer conditions for the community. So if that's what we need to do that and get these facilities back online and up to standard, then so be it. And, you know, including if we have to move the police department to a more up-to-date, better, larger facility that's a little bit further away, that is a tough decision to make, but you have to go with it.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Mr. O'Connell.
Thank you, Ms. Brodsky. I support the proposed debt exclusion. I will be voting for it, and I support the full plan as crafted over an 18-month process by a well-resourced and expert citizen group, including the fire chief and the police chief. I likewise support the proposed relocation of the police station. I would not have voted to put it on the ballot this fall. I would have waited a year to allow time for a more concerted campaign in support of this kind of financial expenditure. I'm greatly appreciative of our friends and neighbors who've stepped up to launch that campaign. I think something like this, in support of this kind of expenditure, takes much more time. And quite frankly, the folks with the political acumen and skill and expertise are working on other campaigns at present, so I would have waited. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Schilly. There is a significant housing shortage right now, and affordable housing is a real problem in Melrose. What do you think are the best ways to work towards solving the housing shortage?
It's a tough one. Obviously, there's been a lot of building going on with a lot of additional units coming online. The only thing to address the shortage, in my mind, in my opinion, is to continue to build. I don't necessarily, there's been a lot of building going on. It's been happening fairly quickly. I wouldn't mind seeing some kind of a pause so the community can digest traffic issues, additional school resources that might be needed, police resources, increased police resources that might be needed. But that's probably it, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you. For affordable housing, it's a two-part strategy in the way I look at it. The first is any development in Melrose currently is requiring 15% of the units to be affordable housing. We should try to get more. These negotiations with developers go on sometimes very much quietly, and I think that the City Council should take a greater role in that. I think we should get as much as we can out of any developer that comes into Melrose. I have in the past worked with the neighbors in other development projects to try to get a better result, and I think we need to continue that. Secondly, the Community Preservation Act. That's an act that allows for funding through a tax surcharge on a real estate surcharge that provides for affordable housing, provides for historic preservation, provides for outdoor recreational activities in open space. So I think by passing the CPA, we get a steady stream of additional funds that we can use in part for affordable housing. And then I think developers who come here really should pay for mitigation into our community because they're making a lot of money off of us, and they should help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Orlandella, same question.
It is not a simple solution of just adding more, because what we're seeing now is we can't fill them, that we can't build them fast enough for people to want to come in. And that includes, individual, the lower income housing. We want to have a more diverse environment. We're building, and it's being purchased in rentals and whatever are being purchased by young adults that are wanting to live, out of the city as they're moving out the first time. I would incentivize those owners in the buildings to, give that credit towards the affordable housing. They're making money off the, 7 college students in an apartment. Incentivize that landowner, that property owner, to be able to, go towards an affordable housing route. And you may see that start to change. We're building, and we're not building, and you can't build fast enough. We have to figure out what to do with the land we have right now.
Thank you. Mr. O'Connell?
I think we have to move actively and expeditiously to actually implement our existing housing production plan. And I think we need to be constantly and creatively updating our zoning ordinance and permitting processes to incentivize and facilitate housing production. I would convene an affordable housing summit to gather practitioners and experts in the field to determine what works, what doesn't, and how we might work collaboratively with developers and others to increase our housing stock. Thank you.
And Mr. Williams?
Thank you. The council passed the housing production plan for Melrose. It passed by the slimmest of margins possible. So always remember that we're only a couple of votes away from backing out of our housing obligations. Housing is a regional problem, and the impacts of housing are also regional. I heard traffic mentioned, and I wanted to note that Linfels Parkway carries more cars per day than there are residents in the city of Melrose. Traffic in Melrose is not a housing problem. Traffic in Melrose is a regional problem. There are two effects in housing. There's a supply effect and a demand effect. If you supply enough housing, it can lower prices. But if the demand for the housing is too high, then the price of the housing that's built and the prices people pay for the housing goes up. What we need to do is very carefully balance the supply of housing. We need to bring in the experts we have in our community, and we need to make sure that we are applying all of the goals of the housing production plan, because they were crafted by experts from regional groups like the Metropolitan Area Planning Association and other people in our community who have expertise in this area.
Thank you. Our next question will start with you, Mr. Sullivan. Thousands of immigrants have poured into our state in recent months seeking shelter and services. Do you think Melrose should be involved with efforts to aid them, and if so, how?
Well, I think that's a national problem, and I also think it's a state problem. Melrose City Council has limitations, but I certainly would do everything I could to support any immigrants that were coming to Melrose, because I'm a son of an immigrant, the son of a son of an immigrant. My ancestors came here, I would say, 3 generations ago on my dad's side, 2 generations ago on my mom's side. So we're really all immigrants. So there should be no reason why we shouldn't help immigrants that are coming to Melrose. But I also think we need to be realistic. We're a Melrose City Council, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't have high aspirations. We should. But there's a certain limit that we can do. I mean, this is really an issue that's got to be dealt with on the federal level, because they have the resources, they have the money. We can't even balance our budget for a simple school committee. So we got to be realistic. So that's my answer. Those are my concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Orlandella?
Welcoming, immigrants and refugees is a thing beyond money and aid. It's literally physically welcoming them into the community. And you hear a lot of stuff in the news today where people, it's a very much they're all about it until it's in their community. I think as a community, we need to budget aside. It needs to be an open and welcoming community to those that are coming in here, because like others have mentioned, our families have all been in that situation, and if we turn our backs to our own past, it is bound to be a disastrous future for us.
Thank you. Mr. O'Connell?
Thank you very much. This could very well be a challenge coming to a neighborhood near you. And I think should we be so challenged, we have a moral obligation to respond and help where and when we can. But financial support for such assistance will have to come from the state and ultimately from the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Mr. Williams, there's 5 of you. You're next.
Okay, thank you. Those of us who are actually serving on the city council remember that we've had a number of issues that the city's dealt with in the past. We had COVID. We certainly have weathered crises before, and I think that through collaboration with the City Health Department, with the Melrose Police Department, and with the experts that we have in housing, we could find an opportunity to help as many people as possible, also in collaboration with the faith-based community, who does a lot of work in terms of food pantries and getting resources out to people in need. The city also has a social worker now, and that person could be useful in helping folks access resources. I don't think that the city of Melrose is going to be able to provide substantial long-term housing or financial support to a major influx of immigrants, but we can certainly do everything we can as a community that's open to all to make sure if somebody comes to us in need that we do everything we can to help them.
Thank you. Mr. Schilly?
Yes, I agree also that we should do everything we can to help these immigrants come in, but I think Melrose would be severely financially strained, so we would need quite a bit of help from the state and the federal government to help these people properly.
Okay, thank you. So the next question will go to you, Mr. Orlandella, first. And Melrose has a longstanding prohibition on overnight parking on the street. Would you consider recommending overnight on-street parking in certain areas, perhaps for a fee, and why?
Yes. You answered it with the second half of that, for a fee. We've just asked 1, 2, 3 questions here and 6 questions in the last session where budget was a concern. If we can legitimately make money by having cars park on the street overnight, it is a no-brainer.
Thank you. Mr. O'Connell.
Well, this is purportedly a safety issue in terms of us having a prohibition on street parking. But it is seen by many with some basis in fact as a means of excluding some people from our community. So it's, for me, this isn't just about, potentially an opportunity to raise money, but it raises deeper questions about really what kind of community we are. So I would propose a task force to look at this and have some open and honest discussions about why we have this prohibition and what the effects of removing it might be.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Williams.
I have lived in 2 communities with overnight parking bans, and both of them did so out of a fear of outsiders coming into their community. The overnight parking ban is designed to keep people who don't have driveways out of Melrose in overnight stays. Now, there are some design challenges, some size limitations on certain roads where if you had a lot of vehicles parked there all the time, you would need to address that for public safety issues or snow removal or just basically getting people back and forth. But I certainly think that there are opportunities for us to reconsider the overnight parking ban. Excuse me, this issue did come up before the Traffic Commission recently, like in the last 2 years. It was voted down, so we've explored it before. I think it might be more interesting to try and rethink the way that we do our overnight parking permits, the way that we collaborate with groups like the hospital, which has a gigantic parking garage that is mostly empty, and whether or not we can do more with the MBTA parking lot at Oak Grove.
Thank you. Mr. Schilly?
I'd oppose overnight parking. I'd oppose it for safety reasons. The streets of Melrose are very narrow, okay? It would be an issue in the wintertime, okay? And it could be a big problem with police and fire getting around town if there were cars parked all over the street. So I would oppose it.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan?
It's a difficult issue, and I thought about it, and I'm concerned about development in Melrose, and I'm concerned about the overdevelopment of Melrose, where we stack and pack and allow too much development that puts strains on our municipal services. And this is part and parcel with it, because a lot of the projects that are being approved are waiving parking requirements. For example, I think everyone who's lived here for at least a couple of years is familiar with the Caruso's Pizza restaurant that used to be around. It's a little bit down Main Street. That project was approved with little or no parking, so that the developer doesn't have to provide any parking at all, from my understanding. And that's my concern, is that this would feed more development. So that's why I'm looking at this in a bigger and broader picture, that I think that we should keep the overnight parking ban. There's obviously a benefit for safety. There's obviously a benefit for pedestrians, obviously a benefit for bicyclists. If you try pulling out or stepping out between vehicles, you're going to get hit.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, as a final question, we offer each of you 1 minute to use as you wish. You may expand on a previous answer, rebut a position, or tell us a question that you wish we had asked and how you would answer. So, Mr. O'Connell, you get the first crack at that.
I think the most important question before us as candidates and voters is what does it take to be an effective elected official? And as I've said in other forums, it takes the ability and the willingness to, I think, talk less and listen more, the ability to take a punch or 1 or 2 or 3 or more and come back. It takes the ability to put the public interest above one's own personal or political interest. And as is the case in all relationships and professional endeavors, it takes the ability to work well with others. to support one's colleagues in their efforts in the public interest, to lead when called upon, to follow when necessary, and to compromise when it's appropriate in the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Thank you. So I think that the role of city council is to build up. The role of city council is to build relationships, it's to build community, it is not to tear down. I would ask the voters to consider that any city council vote in Melrose requires 8 votes to pass out of a group of 11. And you should ask yourself when you're talking to candidates, and I hope they come and meet you and knock on your door and that you have a chance to speak with them, you should ask them who are the other 7 people that will support their positions on the council? Who are the other 7 people that will work with them and make sure that things get done in Melrose? Who are the other 7 people that will work to build up and not work to tear down what we've created so far in this city? Thank you.
Mr. Schilly?
Yeah, I believe that the city council, city government as a whole, has several fundamental things that they're responsible for, such as keeping residents safe, keeping crime, keeping the police and fire staffing levels where they should be, keeping them well-equipped. I believe that city officials also have a responsibility to spend our tax dollars wisely, efficiently, and on what we said we would spend it on. Also, I believe that we need to support, as a city councilman, we need to support our schools. I believe in an educational environment that will provide the teachers the tools necessary to provide our students an education that prepares them for the future.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan?
Thank you. One of the issues I touched on is development. I think all of the issues really in Melrose that we live in that stem from that. I am for limited and controlled development. I'm not against all development. Of course there's going to be development. Of course we're going to build. We should build. But I am for limited development. And what I mean by that is, for example, we've got 5 to 10 projects right now in the city of Melrose. We've got West Wyoming, we've got Caruso's, the VFW, Franklin Street, Tremont Street and Lake Street, Tremont Street, that's next to the parking lot, and we also have the Greenwood Street project. Those projects are going to bring about 260 units into Melrose. That's a lot of development, and people are too busy to really keep track of it. I would like to be the watchdog on the city council on development. Elect me as a watchdog on development for city council, because we're all too busy. We're raising our families, we're pursuing our own jobs, our careers, running our own businesses. No one has time to look at a notice down the hallway that's put up about a development if you don't live right next to it.
Okay.
I'll do that for you. A watchdog on development for city council.
Thank
Chris
you.
Sullivan. Thank you.
Mr. Orlandella?
Melrose is at an inflection point right now, right? There's where people envision Melrose is going to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And there's where Melrose currently is and where people remember Melrose in their hearts for those that have been here an extended period of time. I think up through this point, we've been struggling with what that future looks like. We have 3 groups of people in Melrose that have a very different opinion of what that is. And I think up through this point, we've been struggling to get everybody on the same page. And that is, at the core of why I wanted to run, is to, be a part of what that future looks like, how to build that future properly. And in doing so, be able to see the Melrose that everybody wants to come out in its fullest.
Thank you. That concludes this panel. Thank you all for taking the time to participate, and thank you for your willingness to run for office and serve our community. Okay, so good evening. This is the second panel for City Council, and on this panel, we have 4 in the election, there are 4 at-large seats that are open for election, and we have 5 of the 10 candidates on this panel, and there were 5, the other 5 were on the previous panel. And in addition, on this panel, we have 2 candidates who are running for Ward 2 City Council, and that's 1 seat, and so there's 7 total candidates on this panel. And so just to summarize the format again, The candidates were divided and seated at random by a card draw. The questions tonight were solicited from the public and reviewed and edited by the League of Women Voters of Melrose. I will ask the questions, and each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. Each new question will be started with the next candidate in line. A candidate may ask me to repeat the question if necessary. That won't take off your time. There are league members acting as timers in the audience, and the time will begin to run when you begin your response. A yellow card will be held up when there are 20 seconds left, and a red card will be held up when the time has expired. And I'll just say who the candidates are. There's John Obremski, J. Michael McCarthy, Ward Hamilton, Maya Jamaluddin, Leila Migliarelli, Maria Berardi, and Michael Lyle. So the first question will begin with you, Mr. Obremski, and we'll just go around the table. So what is your position on the debt exclusion for new public safety buildings that will be on the ballot this November? Specifically, what do you think about the proposed relocation of the police station to the Ripley School site?
Thank you. Well, understanding where our public buildings are currently, it's obvious that as a community, we need to do something to create space that is suitable and acceptable for our firefighters and for our police officers. I think that moving forward with this is the right direction for the community to go. I think that we definitely have to look and understand the numbers and how much we are, in fact, spending, but I think it is definitely something that we need to move forward on and have a progressive agenda for. In terms of using the Ripley School site, obviously, ideally, I would like the police station located in a more central location. However, I think that understanding different sites is something that we need to look at as a community and as an elected city council as well. But I think it's a positive thing for Melrose, and I think that that's the direction we need to go in.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy?
Sorry. This debt exclusion, yes. We definitely need new public safety buildings. I know I lived in them for quite a few years. And as far as the site goes with the police station, I don't think it's a good idea there. It's, first of all, it's on the Malden line. Second of all, Wyoming Cemetery is filling up fast. And there's really not going to be any room to go unless you dig into the woods. And it would be a perfect site for it to continue that. I was thinking more towards the police station down towards where the old Normandy house was. That would have been a perfect location.
Thank you. Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you. I served on the Public Safety Building Committee for several years, and I'm intimately familiar with the deficiencies and the need to address them. Anybody that's looked into this knows that we have to address these buildings. I'm a yes vote. The question that's asked is, should we address the deficiencies in the buildings? The answer is yes. The question that the next city council will handle is, what are we going to spend? And I hope to be elected and to help answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jamaluddin?
Thank you. I've been serving on a city council for the past 4 years, and there is no decision that we took lightly as we were voting on it. I made sure to check every single box before making that decision. I was very pleased to vote and getting this order on this decision on the question on the ballot to make sure that the voters be able to make that decision. I do think we are way overdue to fix our buildings, the safety buildings, and this decision should have been done a long time ago and been postponed. We should ensure that the people that serve us, police departments and firefighters, are in a safe situation to be able to best serve this community.
Thank you. Ms. Migliarelli?
Thank you. The need to update our public safety buildings are indisputable. When I toured the fire and police stations 4 years ago, I was shocked and dismayed to see their conditions. I feel strongly that we must act now to help ensure that our police officers and firefighters have safe and functional workspaces. As a city councilor, I'm proud to have voted to put the public safety building question on the ballot as recommended by the Public Safety Building Committee, which includes the Ripley site. I've done this with other key infrastructure projects, and this one is no different, except for the next step is now for the voters to decide whether or not it moves forward. Looking ahead, the new council, along with the new mayor, is going to play a critical role in helping to make sure that this project goes forward. So this is just the beginning of the process. If the initiative passes, the next mayor will drive the process, and the city council will need to approve the bond to fund it and evaluate any interim requests for maintenance for these buildings. I have the experience needed to be a part of this process and looking forward. If it fails, we'll need a mayor and city council who will go and support ongoing maintenance for these buildings.
Thank you. Ms. Berardi?
Good evening. Our safety first responder buildings are an urgent need to be done. This should be number one for Melrose. These are the people that when we need them, they're there. The location of Ripley, I'm just hoping that when we build these buildings, that it's not good for 5 years, but for many years to go, and there is enough space in the area. They deserve the best.
Thank you. Mr. Lyle?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Lyle. I'm the former police chief. I've spent 37 years of my adult life at 56 West Foster Street. I know the conditions, and anybody that's been in there certainly knows them as well. I think we should be prioritizing first Central Fire. When I toured that, it was, I don't know how they're surviving over there. I don't know how the equipment is actually supported in there, but they certainly have challenges. That should be the number one project to be addressed. The police department, it is what it is. It hasn't changed in 50-something years. The color of the paint has, but the conditions haven't changed. We certainly outgrew it many, many decades ago, and that needs to be addressed, probably number two. As far as the Ripley School, I don't think it's the best choice at this time. I would certainly work with the new council and administration to maybe find another suitable place that's closer to the central of Melrose. Way back when, we had the Armory for $1, and that wasn't close enough, but the Ripley School certainly isn't closer than the Armory. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question will go to you, Mr. McCarthy, first, and the question is, there is a significant housing shortage right now, and affordable housing is a real problem in Melrose. What do you think are the best ways to work towards solving the housing shortage, especially affordable housing?
That's a tough one. As far as the housing goes in Melrose, I couldn't live here for a few years. I moved out and I retired from the fire department. It's tough in Melrose, and I really don't see what we can do about it. I mean, I'll work with the committee if elected to do it, but that's about all I got to say on that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you. Currently, I serve as the Vice President at the Board of Directors of Congregational Retirement Homes. We own and oversee about 1/3 of all affordable housing stock in Melrose. Just over a year ago, we met with Mayor Broder and Ms. Gaffey, who's our Director of Community Planning, or the Office of Planning and Community Development. And we met to discuss 6 of the points that were in the housing production plan as it related to partnering with nonprofits. And we presented a plan to develop a site within the city that would help us achieve safe harbor status, which would mean that more than 10% or more of all housing in Melrose would be affordable. I've taken an active role in this city to foster and develop affordable housing, and it's something that's very important to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jamaluddin?
Thank you. Over the past 4 years, we have done a progress in terms of the housing and affordable housing in Melrose, but we still have a lot to do. We still have more work to do, and I am looking forward to be able to find more variety of housing options so that our older adults will be able to downsize while staying in Melrose and don't have to move out of the city. Our low socioeconomic level population and those that are on fixed income will be able to afford living in Melrose if they chose this community to be their home. Thank you.
Ms. Migliarelli?
Greater Boston area is experiencing a major housing crisis. And communities like Melrose that are within that I-95 belt are also hardest hit. Affordability is a huge issue, and in order to have people of all ages afford to live in Melrose, including seniors who want to age in place that they love, we need to be open to opportunities for smart growth and development in order to encourage that affordability. On the council, I helped supported the Melrose Housing Production Plan, which is a vision towards making our community more housing friendly for everyone, and co-filed legislation to accept the city's first affordable housing trust. With this trust, Melrose is poised to start helping and address this affordable housing issue. No one wants a city that is overly congested, but creating housing near mass transit is a best practice that's in line with making sure that we have less cars on the road. No one wants overcrowded schools, but I think we can agree that we want our teachers and paras to have a place to be able to both work and live here. Owning a home is a way to build wealth, and if we as a community can offer the multitude of housing options, we will be better for it. Thank you.
Ms. Berardi?
Affordable housing sounds fantastic. I've been here since 1970, and Melrose has always been lower class, middle class, upper class residents working very hard. But a couple years back, there was supposed to be 36 affordable townhouses built right up against conservation land. City backed it. Instead, the builder built several houses, selling for $1.5 to $2.5 million. Who was that affordable to? That wasn't right. It shouldn't have been done. So when people say affordable housing, I want to see it happen, because a mix of people is wonderful in Melrose.
Thank you. Mr. Lyle?
As far as affordable housing, it's a regional problem. It's not just a Melrose problem, but Melrose should solve their problem. Certainly, the plan that's in place is a viable plan, and we need to find locations within the city, whether it's private or public, to expand that program. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Obremski?
Being a member of the City Council, I too have had the opportunity to work with the housing plan, and I think that if Melrose works with developers in terms of smart growth and has a positive plan for progressive smart growth, I think we can help within the region to help alleviate some of the stress of the housing problem. Is Melrose going to solve the problem individually? Absolutely not. But I think we are on the right track with the housing plan. I think it's a positive approach, and I think that's the direction that we have to go in as a community.
Okay, thank you. So the next question goes to you first, Mr. Hamilton. As the city continues to implement its Complete Streets program, there are mixed opinions on bike lanes in the city. What do you think about the creation of bike lanes and barriers?
Well, I'm constantly traveling about for work through our neighboring communities, and certainly I see the need for bike lanes and other measures that help to enhance the safety of our bicyclists, of pedestrians, and that's part of what every modern city is doing. I think it looks like we're doing the right thing, and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jamaluddin?
As a parent of 4 children who every day walk to school or bike to school or even go to their activities, I know how important it is to make our streets safer for our kids to be able to go around in this small city. I'm definitely with making the city and our streets safer by widening our bike lanes, and I was always supporting of these of the efforts put toward this goal.
Thank you. Ms. Migliorelli?
Thank you. When I'm talking with constituents, pedestrian and bike safety is one of the top concerns that I hear, and personally one of my main concerns as a mother of 2 children who also walk to school, and as someone who walks their dog around the community, it's important that we feel safe while walking. Overall, in the last year, nationwide, pedestrian deaths have gone up 77%, and we have experienced some of those preventable tragedies here in Melrose. To address these issues, I've worked with our state representative and senator to advocate for increased safety on the Lynn Fells Parkway, which is a state-owned road that many residents and children, including my own, cross on a daily basis. I'm also supportive of the piloted traffic calming measures that we've received grant opportunities for, and I will continue to fund these to make sure that our residents are safe walking and biking around town. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berardi?
I've met many people in the past several years who rather go by bicycle than with automobiles. We could definitely make some roads more accessible to them, but some roads are just not meant for the cars and the bicycles. It is too dangerous. There are many times I've seen someone almost get hit. Something needs to be done about that. So maybe if we have particular routes where it's not as much congestion with the traffic for the bicyclists, that might be better.
Mr. Lyle?
Thank you. As far as bicycles and pedestrians, for most of my years in the law enforcement world, I've gone to many car crashes, many pedestrian fatalities. I have concerns about bicycles on the roadway as well as pedestrians crossing. I'm all in on bicycle lanes, but one that does concern me is bicycles going down one-way streets the wrong way. It's not the bicyclist I worry about, it's the operator of that vehicle. Unbeknownst to them, there's a bicycle on the road. They think it's going wrong, and bad things can happen. Thank you.
Mr. Obremski?
Thank you. First, I'd just like to say I'm encouraged by the questions because it seems like they're all questions that are going to move Melrose forward. In terms of safety, pedestrian safety, and bicycle safety, I am encouraged by the idea of bike lanes within the community. I think that it's a progressive approach. I think that you're going to see more and more people using bicycles. Are cars going to go away? No, they are not. I do have concerns about the Lynn Fells Parkway. I also have concerns about Howard Street and streets like that because we are seeing an uptick in terms of accidents in those areas. But in terms of public safety, bicycle safety, pedestrian safety, I really think Melrose is moving forward in the right direction. I would like to see some things such as speed bumps on certain roads to slow vehicles down, but I think a lot of progress has been made thus far, and I'm pretty positive about it.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, I definitely think that bike lanes should be warranted on some streets. Lebanon Street is a little tough. You get some areas it's a little bit thinner. There's been a lot of accidents on Lebanon Street. Some cities and towns, when they have their bike lanes, they put them on the inside of the sidewalk and put the cars out more towards the traffic. But the thing with that is some people not from around the area might smash into the car, which a buddy of mine lost his motorcycle that way. He had it parked out in the street where it's supposed to be parked, the bike lane. Car came by and ran it over in the rain. But definitely bike lanes. I mean, I've been riding a bike this past month a lot myself. And could use it on Main Street too, the upper part.
Okay, thank you. So the next question goes to you first, Ms. Jamaluddin, and the question is, Melrose has a flat rate household fee for trash and recycling. In light of the expiring city contract for trash and recycling, would you recommend changes to our system?
That's true. We are about to have an expired contract, and we will be reviewing that contract. There's a lot to revisit. One thing about it is also to ensure that our recycling can be happening for multifamily buildings, where we are able to pick up those recycling from those buildings. I know that there is many buildings that they do have, that they are contracted with neighbors to be able to put their trash there. So I will ensure to revisit the contract by including the residents that are in that lives in buildings.
Thank you. Ms. Migliarelli?
Thank you. During my time on the council, I've had to evaluate a lot of difficult decisions, and I know I'm aware that this trash contract is going to be one of them, whether it happens at the end of this calendar year in which I'm on the council, or whether it happens next year, which hopefully I will be reelected to be on the council. What I do in terms of making these decisions, in terms of whether we need to increase fees or to think about the impact on our residents, doing the research, talking with our DPW workers, doing my own research on figuring out whether or not this is something we should be pursuing and the impacts on our residents and increasing fees. I think that overall, this is one of the most highly impacted decisions that we're going to be making on the council, and I think we need someone leading with experience who has done this before and will help do this again. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berardi?
I know that our contract is up. I know that before the company that JRM was sold to Reliable, there were many people unhappy with the previous company. I heard that maybe they'll get the machines with the barrels that lift up the barrels. We need a reliable company, and honestly, if we're going to talk about trash, I wish we had more trash and recycling in public areas to eliminate trash that's on the streets and the parking lots.
Thank you. Mr. Weil?
I'm certainly in support of a newer program, possibility of using what other communities have is 1 or 2 barrels that are picked up by a machine or a new type of packer that makes it simple for everybody, instead of having every time there's a windstorm, your trash is blowing all over the place. For one, I'd love to see an enhanced program as far as the business district for recycling. A lot of businesses are just throwing their trash out because they don't have the means or the ability to go down to the city yard on a regular basis to dispose of their recycles. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Obremski?
During my time on the council, I have had a positive experience with most of the trash removal process for myself. I do have constituents sometimes reaching out to me to navigate that for them. It's few and far between. I would say overall it's been a positive experience under this contract. Can improvements be made? Yes, we can definitely make improvements in the new contract. The concern for me really is going to be the additional cost, and looking at those costs and seeing what we can do with a contractor to provide the best service for the community while keeping costs reasonable. And that's really what I'd like to see.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, we definitely do have to have the reasonable cost for the trash, because after all, they get the debt exclusion coming up. Whatever could be the cheapest way out would be great, but Everett has the trash thing. They get a good company, they get capital in there. I was living in Everett before I moved back to Melrose, and they have an excellent trash pickup service there. But definitely has to be addressed.
Thank you. Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you. One thing I would like to do is take a look at what I consider comparable communities. And I think we should take a look at Arlington and Belmont, which both have very successful programs for waste removal and recycling. And I would argue that they are more similar to Melrose than some of the comps that we typically point to, like Wakefield or Stoneham. I hope that we'll do the research and that we will model our new program, whether we modify the existing or go with a whole new vendor and a whole new system. I hope to be a part of that process. Thank you.
Thank you. So our final question, as a final question, we offer each of you 1 minute to use as you wish. You may expand on a previous answer, rebut a position, or tell us a question that you wish we had asked you and how you would answer. And Ms. Migliarella, you can go first with this one.
Thank you very much. As your city councilor for the past 4 years, I have led the council in taking action to hold the administration accountable for its fiscal practices, advocated for smart growth and new affordable housing, helped small businesses during the pandemic, and supported critical infrastructure projects to help our city grow. I promise that if reelected, I will continue to lead with integrity, ask the hard questions, focus on fiscal oversight, and advocate for all of Melrose. There has been no challenge too daunting for me to confront, and I'm ready to bring my diligent and inclusive approach and commitment to doing the work to a third term on the council. As I've said while I've been knocking doors over these past several weeks and months, one of the most powerful aspects of being on the city council is our ability to say yes or no to what the mayor proposes. So when you are deciding on who to vote for, make sure they not only reflect your vision for Melrose, but are willing to do the hard work and ask the tough questions like I have the last 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berardi?
I know that a lot of people in Melrose worry about the taxes increase. We've had people who have been here for decades, if not generations. Their houses are paid for, but our taxes keep skyrocketing to the point where they are financially suffocating, and they might have to move out from Melrose. Yes, we need responder buildings. Yes, we need new roads, parking lots, sidewalks. Melrose needs to work on what is structurally damaged and what is urgent, and put some projects off until another time, and try to keep taxes down as much as possible for some people.
Thank you. Mr. Lyle?
Thank you. I've been a lifelong resident of Melrose. I've watched this grow and prosper over the years, and it got stagnant at one point. Way back when, from Jim Milano, when he revitalized Main Street, what a wonderful job that was, and it continues today. I would like to see that continue forward with our public safety buildings, but more importantly, the school department certainly needs assistance. As a former department head for the police department's budget, we always kept it in order, and the school department certainly needs some assistance to get their budget in order before we do anything in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Obremski?
Thank you. Thank you for having this forum tonight, and I thank all the residents for electing me previously to the city council, not to the city council, and previously to the school committee. I am very excited and confident in the approach that Melrose is taking towards different projects within the community and for the city. I am absolutely sure that the residents of Melrose feel confident in the community and the positive, forward-thinking approach that we are taking as a council and as a community. I think continuing to do so is the only way to move forward. I'm excited about the future, and I'm happy that I, along with my family, live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, back to the public safety buildings, definitely need them. Like I said, I was a firefighter here in town for 20 years. It's deplorable, living conditions for them. And another thing I found deplorable is some of the road conditions in Melrose too, that they definitely have to be addressed. I went up my old neighborhood up in Dexter Road, where I grew up on. It's horrible. I mean, there's a new neighborhood up there now. There's streets off of Dexter Road now. Wasn't there, it's all woods when I was growing up. And, those taxes should be paying something. We pay an excise tax, supposed to be taking care of the roads. Gas tax, we pay the state, supposed to be taking care of the roads and bridges. And it just needs to be done. It's deplorable.
Thank you. Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you. I have a record of service to a variety of organizations and institutions in and around Melrose. I believe in being of service to others, and I wish to bring my service to the City Council. I live my life in such a manner that character, integrity, and speaking the truth, even when it's a difficult truth, are the most important things. And I look forward to serving Melrose on the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jamaluddin?
I have high expectations for a city that serves everyone and the inclusive approach to get us there. With my professional experience and my 4 years experience as a city council, I will continue to make the right decision for the benefit of the people that I serve. I have 17 years experience in healthcare, case management, and as a diversity, equity, and inclusion manager, I feel more equipped to serve every resident in my community. I understand the needs of this community, the need of every resident in my community. I will bring their voices to the table at the decision making and make sure that they are well represented. When I first ran in 2019, I promised to get social worker for this city, and I delivered. If I am elected, I know the need now is pressing to get more money for the city, and I will challenge the new administration to get a well-equipped and dedicated grant writer so that we can secure every grant and money for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes this panel. Thank you all for taking the time to participate, and thank you for your willingness to run for office and serve the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, hello again. The final panel tonight is for two candidates for mayor. They are Jennifer Grigoritis and, Monica Medeiros Solano. If you are just joining us, I will summarize the format. The candidates were seated at random by a card draw. The questions were solicited from the public and reviewed and edited by the League of Women Voters of Melrose. I will ask the questions, and each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. Each new question will be started with the other candidate. A candidate may ask to have the question repeated as necessary. There are league members acting as timekeepers in the audience. The time will begin to run when the candidate begins their response. A yellow card will be held up when 20 seconds are left, and a red card will be held up when the time has expired. Candidates, please stop when you see the red card. So you need to look that way. Because of the short time available for answers, we ask people to be mindful of brevity and clarity and to refrain from any personal references about other candidates. So the first question for Ms. Grigoritis: what do you think about the proposed debt exclusion for public safety buildings that is on the ballot this year? In particular, what do you think about the proposed relocation of the police station to the Ripley School site?
Thank you for that question. I, like every other member of the City Council, voted to place this question on the ballot to bring it before voters in November, and I am personally in support of it, and as a homeowner and a taxpayer will be voting yes. These buildings have been left in a state of disrepair for far too long, and we're now at a point where we need to make substantial investment in order to bring them up to the type of building we hope to have for our first responders. As it relates to the police station moving to the Ripley School, I think we as a city need to really think about where we can best meet our infrastructure needs and how we can do that, given the fact that we are a community of 4 square miles, and this is a solution to a problem that has existed for far too long.
Thank you. Ms. Solano.
Thank you. And I should just specify, my last name is actually Medeiros Solano.
Medeiros
So both
Solano,
names,
I
sorry. Thank you.
apologize.
I appreciate
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate this question. Our public safety buildings have really fallen into a state of disrepair over the years, and they're really not adequate at this point to meet the needs of our public safety officials. So I believe that the question that is before, what will be before the voters, is a worthwhile and needed expenditure and project. And so therefore, I do support that project. I do believe that should this ballot question move forward and pass, that I am the candidate that has the most and best experience to help manage that process and to make sure that the funds are used for their intended purpose. I have been on the school committee when we built the new middle school on time and on budget. I was a ward alderman for Ward 2 during the biggest public construction project that our city has seen in terms of public works, and I have experience in my my personal life working for the town of Norwood.
Thank you. Ms. Medeiros Solano, the next question goes to you first. There is a significant housing shortage right now, and affordable housing is a real problem in Melrose. What do you think are the best ways to work towards solving the housing shortage, especially affordable housing?
Thank you. Yes, housing shortage is a problem, especially for younger people and older people, but really kind of across the board. As a former city councilor, I have supported zoning changes which would allow housing to be built in Melrose in places where we didn't have it before, as well as to increase the limit or the requirement that builders would have. Before, they only needed to make 10% of their units to be affordable, and now we've moved it up to 15%. That's a small step, but there's a lot more to do, and I think we need to look really creatively and see if we can find some other options. One thing I think we can explore is possibly offering some incentives for people to add affordable deed restrictions to their existing properties. And we can also have a community conversation and talk about having and building maybe a larger, another 55-plus unit building to try to meet this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grigoritis?
Thank you. So the housing shortage is certainly a huge area of concern across the region, and particularly in Melrose. As a city councilor, I co-authored the order that created the city's first ever affordable housing trust, which allows us to put monies into an account so that we can pull a bunch of levers to try to address that. I also believe we really need to be focusing on housing across the lifespan. 30% of our city rents and another 20% are age 65 plus. We need to be thinking about how we make Melrose a community people can afford to live in throughout their life. And we need to also lean on our state and federal partners to help us solve this crisis. It is not something that this one community of 30,000 people can do alone. I'm proud to have been endorsed by Governor Healy, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, and both our state rep and our state senator, and know that I can rely on those partners to help us work toward a solution.
Thank you. Ms. Grigoritis, the next one is for you first. Many residents would like to see more local commercial and business uses in the city for the vitality of the city and to help with the tax base. Do you agree? And if so, how would you attract businesses to Melrose given the limited non-residential land and the current market conditions?
Thank you. So I think we always need to think about the difference between commercial and retail, which are two different uses of business, both of which are incredibly important to our community. As mayor, I would like you to spend every dollar you can within the 4 square miles of Melrose, because that's what makes our community strong and keeps us all here together growing and thriving. I think that we absolutely can look to target commercial development, especially as we think about how people's transit patterns have changed since COVID and may be a place where people want to open small offices. I think the reality is also that as a community that is 95% residential, that will continue to largely be the makeup of who bears our tax burden going forward.
Ms. Medeiros-Solano?
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really vital to support the commercial and business community that we do have. Melrose in particular is about 92% residential, 8% commercial, and that base really helps to support our residents. And so whatever we can do to support that. So that means looking at our policies that we have in a community, looking at the business approval processes to get a business up and running, and making sure that we're doing that as smoothly as possible, that we're making it this town business friendly. In that respect, we can actually go out and we can meet with different business groups and see if there are things that we can attract businesses here. And I think as we look towards other developments, we may look at our zoning and say we want to designate some areas to have retail space on the first floor and see if we can make some changes that way. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is for you first, Ms. Medeiros-Solano. There have been many large multi-unit residential buildings built and permitted along the rail corridor and downtown over the last 10 years, much of it with reduced parking requirements. Many residents are opposed to the height, density, and reduced parking in these developments. What do you think about these issues?
Thank you. So this is some of the decisions that I voted on as a city councilor. And when I was here in the city council chamber and we made changes to our zoning, I was always a proponent of increasing the amount of parking that was going to be required. Ultimately, I recognized that we needed to create more housing, and I supported the zoning changes that did that, regardless of whether or not I won that piece of the argument about parking. But I think we have to be really realistic. We made changes to the rail corridor overlay district, for instance, that required that for every 10 units of housing that you had, you needed to have at least one visitor parking space. Right now, there's a big development being proposed there. They're not using that zoning. They're going and asking for other requirements. I think we have to be very realistic about what we need for parking for visitors, and also it's a lot of cars that come to a development even if the people don't have cars themselves. Thank you.
Ms. Grigoritis?
Thank you. So the We absolutely need to continue to build smart growth developments. When we talk about Melrose being largely residential, another way to think about that is that we are a community of people, and that is what keeps us thriving and growing. And so we want to make sure that we are accessible to as many people who want to come and live here, whether they're just starting out in their life or they're toward the final years of it, that this is somewhere that they can be for as long as they want. We need to do that strategically and collaboratively and really need to think about what that looks like to meet people's different needs. We also need to do that in compliance with state law. And if we are not allowing for smart growth along the rail corridor, we run the risk of losing state funding. So I think it is something that as mayor, I will want to look at holistically, have meaningful community conversations about what does the future of growth and development look like in this community, and build a community that reflects our values and where we want to go in the future.
Thank you. So the next question goes to you first, Ms. Grigoritis. What is your position on establishing the position of a full-time grant writer for the city?
Thank you. I'm fully in support of that, as it was something that I had mentioned at a forum back in July. It is something that I think we need. I believe we can use some of our existing ARPA funds, which is our federal COVID money, to pay for that position and see if it is able to pay for itself. Right now, we ask our city department heads to do their jobs and also actively seek funding. Grant writing, like any other type of skill, is something that requires expertise, and so we need to bring in someone who can do that and leverage all of the state and federal funding that is available to us so that we can in turn bring the hopefully reduced costs for taxpayers.
Thank you. Ms. Medeiros-Solano?
Thank you very much. Now, this is an area where we differ. I really feel that we have, the reality is we have a budget right now that has a $2.7 million structural deficit. We think that might be a lot higher than that. So I don't think personally that we are in the position that we can bring on and create new positions, and that does include a grant writer. I think we could potentially use some of our ARPA funds to do this on a contract or part-time basis, but I think we also have plenty of department heads who do an excellent job at working to find grants. And as the mayor myself, I will be very active, as I was as a city councilor, in being involved at the state level, making sure that I am kept aware of different grant opportunities that are available for the community. And I will take that on, and I will ask my staff to do that as well. But I think we can do that without adding a new position, and I think we have to, given our finances right now.
Thank you. So the next question is for you first, Ms. Medeiros-Solano. The thousands of immigrants have poured into our state in recent months seeking shelter and services. Do you think Melrose should be involved with efforts to aid them, and if so, how?
Thank you. You know, the world is in a very tenuous situation right now, and I think that this community here in Melrose, and as well as the state and this country, we're going to see a lot more immigrants and people seeking refuge here in the United States. Some of those people may be coming to Melrose. We certainly don't have the real true infrastructure. We don't have hotels to really adequately house people, but there are people, right, who are going to be coming here potentially in need. And as mayor, I will do what I can to make sure that Melrose answers the call. If we have to, we'll have to look for volunteers. But I think it's vitally important that we have a strong emergency management plan in place proactively to identify places where people could live, sleep, how we could house them. Anybody who watched the movie put on by Melrose Kind about Come From Away, that's the example that I think Melrose could be, but we need to have people involved proactively, translators, and people ready to be volunteers. Thank you.
Ms. Grigoritis?
Thank you. Obviously, this is a country of immigrants. Every single one of us can trace ourselves and our family's journey, whether we were here for thousands of years or came more recently than that. And I think Melrose is no exception. We are one community open to all, and we'll certainly want to continue to serve the immigrant population of this community as we have been doing. I think that includes continuing to ensure that we have social workers for both our Council on Aging and Milano Center attendees, as well as the general population, as we currently do. It is continuing to make our city services more accessible to different languages. 5% of Melrose does not speak English as a first language. We need to make sure that all of our city services are available. And it is making sure that we welcome folks into our schools and into our city services in a way that is both culturally reflective and trauma-informed. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, what can the city do to reduce the impacts of climate change in municipal operations as well as the community? Ms. Grigoritis.
Thank you. I'm particularly passionate about discussing climate resiliency because I think it is a place where we can have significant impact at the local level. One example I'd like to give is about leaf pickup. As our falls become longer and our winters become more mild and our springs start sooner, we have not shifted our leaf pickup schedule to reflect the change in our climate. And as a result, we are not providing great services to a great community, and we are also impacting the safety of our roads and our drainage system when we have leaves that don't get picked up and are being left to clog our drains and sewers. So I think small things like working with DPW to shift our service delivery so that it is more reflective of our changing climate can have a significant impact. I also think we need to be looking at all of our buildings and going after federal Inflation Reduction Act money so that we can create a city infrastructure that is resilient for the climate change that is here.
Thank you. Ms. Medeiros-Solano?
Thank you. As a city councilor, I voted for many initiatives here in the city that have really changed our city for the greater good. And for instance, Melrose was in the first group that became a green community. We were also one of the first to join the Municipal Vulnerability Program, both of which opened up the city to significant grant funds and save the taxpayers money while also helping us with climate resiliency. I also was one of the councilors to vote for the very first municipal aggregation program, which have saved the ratepayers of electricity countless dollars here in Melrose. There's a lot more we can do. I think it's looking forward. It's making sure that I would like to see us switch to being to gardening organically, right? Staying away from dangerous chemicals that affect our residents, our students, our workers. I want to make sure we look into piloting a compost program for local businesses. I think there's a lot more. Thanks.
Thank you. So Ms. Medeiros-Solano, the next question goes to you first. How would you manage our budget given economic conditions and our existing tax base? Please include your thoughts about tax increases and maintaining current programs and services.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, we have a significant structural deficit here in the city, and I think it's crucial that we work to try to get this lessened and hopefully eliminated. I think that happens is one of the things that I'm passionate about is finances, and I've been promoting starting a 5-year strategic financial plan for the city. And that would mean auditing our books to see what we've been spending and why, going back. That means also looking forward to see what do we really realistically need to operate our budget moving forward. And then lastly, we need to look to see where we can find some efficiencies. Are there different things that we can do? Can we partner with other communities to provide some services differently? And after we've exhausted all of these things, we may need to look at an override. But to me, that's a last resort, and I think it's much more about managing our budget and making sure we're staying within our means first.
Thank you. Ms. Grigoritis?
Thank you. The city of Melrose, I think, fundamentally has a math problem, and I know we've referenced the $2.7 million structural deficit, which has existed in one form or another in this community going back to at least the early 2000s. $2.7 million works out to approximately 30 staff on either the city and or school side. So that is a significant reduction in our city staff, and I don't see how we go within those means without seeing a reduction in services for residents. I believe we need to be leveraging partnerships at the state and federal level, asking for all of the help that we can get. That includes advocating for changes and how unrestricted local aid is delivered by the legislature. It is advocating with our federal delegation to make sure that we have earmarks to take on large projects. And then it is going to be asking our community to consider investing in itself and investing in what is one of our greatest resources, which is our city employees, our firefighters, our police officers, our teachers, our DPW workers, so that we can hopefully retain the staff that we need to deliver the services that you all expect.
Thank you. Ms. Grigoritis, the next question is for you first. What is your position on the Community Preservation Act? If you support it, what would be your priorities for the use of the funds it generates?
I believe the Community Preservation Act is a huge opportunity that we have left on the table for far too long. It comes with matching funds from the state, which means that we have left free money on the table without accessing it for the community. I think all of the needs of all of the areas that the Community Preservation Act covers, affordable housing, open space, preservation of buildings and cultural institutions, are ones that we can take advantage of here in Melrose, whether it's needed repairs to Memorial Hall, whether it's improving Hesseltine Field where my kids have played soccer, or whether it is continuing to address our housing shortage. So I think it is a critical lever that we as a community, and it would need to go to voters, have to decide to pull so that we have access to those resources.
Thank you. Ms. Medeiros-Solano?
Thank you. I do not support implementing the Community Preservation Act. That is another tax or surcharge on our taxpayers above and beyond the Proposition 2.5 levy limit. I see there's so many people struggling to make ends meet here and to find Melrose to be affordable. This is another way that it could become unaffordable. The state, I had served on the Mass Municipal Association Board of Directors for 6 years, had previously been the president of the Massachusetts Municipal Councilors Association for 3 as well. During that time, we advocated all the time to make sure that we got not just more funding for the city of Melrose and for our communities, but also for other communities who did have the CPA, and the state was not matching those funds for a long time. So, you know, it's not a guarantee that the state will continue to match those funds, and I think, you know, we're better off trying to look within ourselves to find the solutions for what we would really like to see happen here in Melrose.
Thank you. So now for the final question. As a final question, we offer each of you 1 minute to use as you wish. You may expand on a previous answer, rebut a position, or tell us a question that you wish we would have asked and how you would answer. And Ms. Medeiros-Solano, you get to go first.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to tell you why I want to be mayor. I love this community. I have grown up here in Melrose. I have committed myself to public service as a volunteer, as well as an elected official on the school committee for 2 years and on the city council for 12. I love this community. There's only so many things that you can do from this seat here on the city council chamber. Some of these things need to be done from the mayor's office. I'm for making sure that we have a responsible, balanced budget that is looking ahead and that is forecasting for what our needs are into the future. I want to make sure I've had great opportunities because of the education, the public education that I had in the Melrose Public Schools. I want to make sure our schools stay that way. I want to make sure that we are keeping Melrose beautiful, that we're maintaining our buildings, that we're our public space, our streets, our sidewalks, and that we're making our government open, transparent, and accountable, and that people feel welcomed and included in the decisions that we make. That's why I'm running. That's why I ask for your vote. I think I can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grigoritis?
Thank you. I am running for mayor because I believe that government can and should positively impact people's lives. And I've spent my entire career working to do that. I've spent the past 15 years as the chief of staff at the Massachusetts Office for Victim Assistance, which is a state agency that advocates for victims and survivors of crime across the state. In that role, I have managed a staff of 30 and an annual budget of $60 million, and seen the impact that we can have on people when we work together and not just in silos. I have 2 boys in the Melrose Public Schools and am so proud to call Melrose my home and to give my children the opportunity to grow up here. I want to bring those skills and experience and that passion for this community to all of you to reflect back the values that I know that we share so that we can continue to move Melrose forward together. I ask for your vote on November 7th. I want to thank the League and my colleague for being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our forum tonight. Thank you both very much for your answers, and thank you to all the candidates for taking time to participate in this event. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I'd like to remind everyone to exercise your right and vote on Election Day, Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. Good night.